with eSold, I was selling stuff online. We were open to the public for people to bring in stuff that we could help them sell and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then I started advertising because I realized that it was a good item and a good product category that we would help people sell electronics. People always want to upgrade their phones or stereos or trade, and so we will help you sell your electronics. We'll buy them from you and sell and make a profit. And I realized this is a pretty good turnover and a good profit margin too.
So what were some primary examples of electronics that were fitting that?
Cell phones were a big one. Cell phones, tablets, laptops and computers weren't that great, just because people didn't have the emotional attachments.
So the first tablets were out
they
then,
were just
and people
coming
were
out, yeah.
trying to upgrade their tablets or their cell phones. So that started to become a little bit of a
Sure.
Okay, all right.
And so as I was selling those online, I thought, well, these are good. I'm going to advertise. So I started putting out ads on, on the internet, in newspapers.
Buy, sell, trade,
yeah.
Cell phones.
I'll buy your cell phones. I'll give you cash money for your cell phones, that kind of thing. And so we would buy them and then sell them online and flip it for a pretty good profit and quick because the inventory was readily available in the community.
Okay. Well, you're describing the process of going from sort of, to put it in more specific terms, say a business that goes from being very diverse, we'll say, maybe overly diverse, we'll take anything.
Yes. To
identifying a market, a niche within that broad spectrum that looks like it's sort of bubbled up on its own, that started to become more and more of a focus, and you thought, it sounds like that's maybe where the New Wave Wireless idea started to come from, and you focus more on that. So go ahead and walk us through that analysis.
At this point in time, it started becoming a potential business idea in a lot of people's minds across the country because shortly after when we started doing this, you started seeing these commercials on TV, we'll buy your old cell phones or send us in your old phones and we'll pay you cash. And it was after this, so I wasn't the only one seeing what was going on here.
This is around 2009 time frame.
Yeah, right at the beginning of 2009. And at the same time, I guess as this increased, it became harder and harder and harder and harder to sell stuff online like this because, because people were getting, maybe junk phones or whatever. So it got harder and harder to do. So as I'm struggling more and more, I thought, well, I'm just going to open up a little section here where I sell them on my own. I don't have to sell them online. I can sell them here. I can buy them from people here and sell them to somebody else here. That's okay to do.
Okay, so you weren't reselling from your store. You were only buying from your store initially. All right.
Right.
Your storefront.
Right. And so I went and so I thought, well, I'll start doing this. Well, that started off really slow, and I was doing both, and then it got so hard to sell online for me that it just wasn't working anymore. So at that point,
this was still all under eSold.
It's all under eSold. At that point, I thought,
you and 2 employees.
Right. 2. Right. And at that point, I thought, well, I can't sell online anymore. It's becoming too challenging. I'm losing too much money. It's too much for me, and I think I'm going to focus on just selling here to the local public. And again, I'm small business, not making much, not a lot of success there. It was just out of necessity again. Well, as I start doing this, we broaden the product spectrum to where we're selling service with it, prepaid service, and cell phones, and accessories. And
so new cell phones, in other words.
Right.
Not just used ones.
And we started finding distributors where we could get all this stuff, from selling cell phones online and kind of being in that sphere or that realm of business. We started figuring out, okay, this is where we can get this. And this.
But that's a substantial shift. So where did that come from, and how did you go find service?
Again, it was out of necessity because I knew that this other form of income and this other form of business was down. It was dying out.
Just the broad online selling.
Right, and I had to quit doing what I was doing and figure out something else. And so I took what I was doing online and focused it more here locally.
How did you know that selling cell phone service in that manner was even possible, though?
I didn't. Yeah, it didn't at all. Again, it was one of those just as I was buying phones and reselling them in my store, and one of the reps was telling me basically, hey, are you selling service with this?
A rep of what sort?
The rep of who I was buying the phones from. So
New phones.
New phones.
All right, at that
Hey,
point,
are you
once
selling
you started
service
selling new
too?
phones.
What are you doing with these phones? Are you selling service too? We've noticed you've sold a few. What's going on? What are you doing?
All right.
Okay, well I'll try it. And we started bringing in more and more and more. We'll offer this and this and this, but instead of marketing to the mass like we were before, it was just to the local Jonesboro market of people that were wanting to buy, sell, trade phones or prepaid service.
So again, conversations with your colleagues, your business interactions, relationships, just conversations that naturally happen, presented new ideas, and permitted you to broaden what you were offering. So that sort of the ideas. So would you say it absolutely sort of evolved? It sort of just naturally evolved, but you had to be opportunistic and recognize when there was a possibility there, and you were adapting out of necessity as well.
Like adapting out of necessity, almost like a evolution of a business species or something. It was because it had to, and certain ones worked better than others, and those ideas and business practices that worked best were the ones that we stuck with.
So these what I'm hearing from the guy who said, "Hey, maybe might you sell some of this stuff for me?" To, "Hey, what are you doing with these phones? You sold a few now. Are you providing services too?" That all that sort of feeds off itself, and it's a matter of the light bulb going off in your mind when you hear that, and seeing that opportunity and just flowing with it. There's a natural sort of creative, and it goes logical as well process there.
And like you say now, New Wave Wireless has evolved into something a lot bigger than anybody ever expected. We've got 10 employees now, probably half of them full time. We've got about 5,000 customers or so.
A store in Jonesboro and a store in
Jonesboro, Paragould, almost a store somewhere else.
So you're looking at a third store that's farther away, right?
And it's evolved, It's evolved into something that we never thought it would happen, but it's like you say, because we were able to identify these opportunities that were out there and figure out what worked best to meet those needs in niche markets and that sort of thing.
So the genesis then of New Wave Wireless was that point in time where you recognized a more specific opportunity with mobile, we'll just say mobile devices, and got the idea about selling the services in addition to the hardware, and were you marketing it specifically as that? And
then we started at that point, once we realized that this is the direction of the business and not the online sales. It was a local market thing. We started putting ads in the newspaper, ads,
Came up with a new name? At what point did you carve that out and say, this is a whole new business called New Wave Wireless?
At the point whenever I still had eSold open, and I wanted to create that different branch that sold locally and not online. I didn't want people to get them mixed up. So I thought, well, eSold still sells online. New Wave Wireless sells just cell phones here to local.
All right.
eSold can still sell tanning lotion or whatever else we have. New Wave Wireless just sells cell phones. And so at that point we had to make a specification on what does what, and that's when that was created.
So they coexisted for a little while, and you came up with New Wave Wireless, the name.
Right. I mean, we didn't really have the business model ironed completely flat. There were still some things to work out at that point, but we knew overall what we wanted to do.
Well, thanks for sharing your time. Again, we're in the habitat of the creature that is the entrepreneur here, trying to figure out what makes them tick and how they succeed, and so we can all do it. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.